Hey everybody, got a new episode coming at you right now, and this one is all about Picard, all about Star Trek Picard, because I'm a huge Star Trek fan, I'm a huge Star Trek nerd, and I am completely excited for the return of Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Now, there's going to be a lot of spoilers in this episode. So I'm going to be talking a lot about the first two episodes, things I've seen, kind of recapping what the series is about, where it's going, and really, and also what I want to see going forward. Like you're dipping into my Star Trek. This is the Star Trek I grew up with. I started watching it when it first came out in was 86 or 87. Like I was there like every season I was there with these characters. I went to every movie in the theater. I saw them like opening weekend. So I even have the video games. I had the action figures. I had the games that were not even particularly good, but I spent weeks and months playing Star Trek Armada, and I loved it because I love the world Gene Roddenberry created. I've always loved these characters, and I've always loved Jean-Luc Picard. So the fact that he's back in a new series makes me incredibly excited. So just kind of dive in. The first thing I loved, and they just immediately they grabbed me right away, was the return of the Enterprise D. Not only the return of the Enterprise D, but also Data. And the fact that Data was in his movie uniform just just made me smile from ear to ear. Not only that, but you also got a chance to see him back in his series uniform, him and Picard. So that was incredibly fun. And then if you don't know, IDW has a Star Trek Picard prequel series out. It's 3 issues. It's really awesome. They're still available. It was a Star Trek Picard countdown, and and the reason why I bring it up is because one of the next thing you notice is that Picard has two Romulans living with him, Laris and Zhaban. And what you find out, especially if you read the comics, is that Laris and Saban are former Tal Shiar agents who rescue Picard during the mission in this series, and they come to live with him after while he's trying to help save the Romulan Empire. Him and Raffi Musakar, who you'll meet in episode 2 and 3. So the other thing I love is that during the investigation, because what happens is that there's a young woman named Daj who her boyfriend is killed, and she goes to in the midst of killing them in return. She sees Picard and she goes to visit him because she thinks he can help her. And we find out later when Picard goes to his office and starts having visions and dreams, which I don't know where they're coming from. It's weird that that he's having them. He goes to his office at the archives, and I love seeing his office because you see like the captain's yacht uh, from um, from Insurrection. You see Batleth because he was the arbiter of secession for the Klingon Empire. You see the banner from Captain Picard Day. Just a lot of Easter eggs for fans of the character. Just and it pretty much like everything from his office. Even when you walk in, you get the Stargazer as well. His first ship. But Laris and Savannah are interesting characters. They're very loyal to Picard, and that's one of the things I love about them. And the fact that that Daj's character arc is interesting because it turns out that she is a flesh and blood android. Now, if you don't know, one of the other things that they talk, the reason why Data is so significant is because of his connection to Daj. Is he actually painted her years ago and called the painting Daughter. And if you don't know anything about Data and daughters, he definitely has a thing for creating daughters. So it's definitely touching on a lot of those Star Trek um, lore and next generation things, which are really awesome. And one of the things you'll see in the series, especially in the first episode, is the Romulans are reclaiming a Borg sphere, and that's going to be interesting going forward, especially when you find out what about the things that happened in episode 2. Now in episode 2, you get to see what happened at Utopia Planitia. So what happened was a series of synthetics actually were hacked, and they go ahead and destroy the shipyard, which causes a ban on all artificial life forms throughout the Federation. Something that becomes interesting later, especially when we find out that from Laris when she's doing her little CSI thing. And the thing I love about episode 2 is I got some sweet techno babble, which I had been missing, but I really loved. Which, not necessarily missing. Like you get it in Discovery, but it just seems I like it more in this context, especially the way maybe it was her delivery, but it was just really awesome. It was probably her accent that helped. But you find out something interesting about the Romulans, which I never would have thought about before. But now that I'm going back and going through every Romulan episode of Next Generation I've ever seen, it makes perfect sense. And Laris is the one that brings it up when she basically tells, Picard and the audience that Romulans don't use AI. And I thought about that. Not only do they not use AI, but you've never heard like a computer voice on a Romulan ship. Now, I might be wrong. If I'm wrong, definitely let me know. Like, you can email me at superpoweredfancast.com, superpoweredfancast@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment on the video here and just tell me, like, which episode did you hear a Romulan AI speak? Because, like I said, I can always be wrong. I may be a fan, but I don't remember everything. I'm an adult. But again, going back to that, I just thought it was a really interesting plot point that the Romulans don't use AI. And apparently there's an organization that's older than the Tal Shiar, being the Zhat Vaj. And then you get into like another Starfleet conspiracy, which, is always interesting because as utopian as Starfleet and the Federation have always seemed, there's always things beneath the surface. Like you have your Section 31s, you have your conspiracies at the heart of Starfleet, and it looks like you're gonna get one here as well. And I like the fact that Picard goes into Starfleet looking for a ship and a small crew and gets completely shut down because they basically don't care about his his reputation and anything like that. And that's interesting to me. I really love the fact that they take him to task for basically speaking his mind, and it lets you know that like anything else, things really get done outside the system, and you're putting Picard in the basically in the role of outlaw, and that's kind of where I want to see him. I don't necessarily want to see him following the rules. I don't want to see him behind the sitting in the chair of a starship commanding people. And one of the things I love is the fact that, and he even brings it up himself, that if he were to ask Riker or Troy or LaForge, they would absolutely do it. But this is a mission that he wants to do himself, and the reason why he's doing this mission is because Daj is killed, and when they find out that Daj has a twin sister, everyone basically starts looking for her. Unfortunately, the Romulans find her first, and that starts the second part of the storyline. Now, one of the things that's been great about this series so far is that just having Picard in a position where he's just itching to get back into space. And you see it in every scene, like just that longing to be somewhere up there, to be in the stars. Like he's always been that kind of person. It's frankly the reason why he didn't take over the family business in the first place, and his brother did, was because he wanted to be amongst the stars. He wanted to travel. He wanted to explore. That's the kind of person that Jean-Luc Picard has always been. So it's nice to see him kind of come alive in those moments when he's preparing for a new adventure, and that's also one of the things I love about this series so far. So one of the things, just getting into just what I've seen so far, I want to get into what I want to see going forward, because there's some things that are coming up that I have speculated about, but I want to know more about. Like this shot from one of the trailers. So I want to know who Seven of Nine from Voyager is holding. Now I think it's Chakotay, because on the series they really kind of played up, especially in the last couple of seasons, the relationship between the two of them. So I think if there's anyone who would mourn this deeply for, if there's anyone Seven would mourn this deeply for, I think it would be Chakotay. And then kind of the uniform looks like that, and even the hairline for the most part kind of favor Chakotay. It almost looks like he's wearing a Voyager uniform like his one on the series. So I want to know going forward like what this shot is. I'm hoping I can see that, and in episode 4. And the next thing is I want to see Riker and Troy. I want to see what this shot means. I want to know what he goes to Riker and Troy for, and what they have to say. Does he go visit them on Beta Z, or maybe they're somewhere else? But I want to see that interaction. I don't want the series to turn into a TNG reunion show, but just to kind of know where the characters are and where they've transitioned to, and what they kind of think of Picard now would be interesting, and especially Riker and Troy, just because of, kind of the way he left Starfleet would have, kind of shone a light on them as being, his closest friends, and them being on the Titan. I just would want to see how they move forward. And the next thing I know is like, I want to know who this guy is. Like, seriously. Like, it's a Romulan swordsman who's dressed like a samurai. I'm literally right now, I'm calling him Romullegolas, because that's literally who he reminds me of. Just with the pointy ears and he reminds me of a badass. I want to know who he is and who he's fighting for, what he's fighting for, and what he's going to do. So that's really just, I want to. And the last big mystery I really want to get into is Bruce Maddox. Now, Bruce Maddox was on the episode The Measure of a Man, which is season 2, episode 9 of Star Trek The Next Generation. Now, Bruce Maddox wanted to disassemble Data and build an army of Data. Not necessarily an army. He wanted to build a bunch of Data so that every ship had their own Data. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? But Bruce Maddox's name has come up in both episodes, like the first episode and the second episode. So as a character, he seems significant, especially since it seems that he's the one who created Daj and her sister, Soji. So where is Bruce Maddox now? Like, he's basically out in the wind. So does he become someone that they go looking for? Does he have a bigger part in these events? Is there a reason why he's in hiding? Like, I want to know. Like, how did he create such perfect? How did he basically create androids who believe they're human? That's the next thing I want to find out. So if you're a fan like me, I've gone back and I've gone and rewatched episodes. I rewatched episodes like literally after I watched the Picard episodes, just to kind of transition myself back into like who these characters are and what they're doing and what they're looking for. So if you're like me, I'm going to recommend some episodes to watch, just because one of the biggest questions I have is going to come at the end of this. So the first episode I'm going to recommend is The Measure of a Man, season 2, episode 9, Star Trek: The Next Generation. Now the next one I'm going to recommend is because we're talking about Data and Data's daughter, is The Offspring. This was season 3, episode 16. This Data creates a daughter and Starfleet goes nuts. They send people to come and take her away. It's a very good episode, a very emotional episode, and you'll see why. The next one, because going into episode 3, we get to see the return of Hugh. So I would recommend, before you do that, watch I, Borg. That's season 5, episode 23. That episode actually is about and this is like kind of this is pre Seven of Nine, but this is a Borg who is cut off from the collective and finds his individuality. He bonds with members of the crew, especially Data and Geordi, and Picard has to decide whether or not to send him back to the collective as a weapon to destroy the Borg, or allow him to remain free. It's a very good episode. It's gonna have a lot to do with who Hugh is, but also it leads me to my next question. So one of the things they talk about in the first couple of episodes is that data can't be recreated, and that's the reason why the F8s and all the rest of them were so flawed. Now, Data, being a Soong type android, was unique, and the reason why, and they bring this up, the reason why Data's transfer to B4 didn't work was because he was an incomplete copy. So everything in Data's neural net could not be transferred to the incomplete, the flawed copy of himself that was B4. But there is another Soong type android out there, and I'm going to recommend watching season 6 episodes 27 and season 7 episode 1. It's a 2-part season finale of season 6 and the first episode of season 7 of Star Trek Next Generation. That episode is called Descent, and the reason why is because the other Soong type android that was killed and disassembled is Data's brother Lore. So does Lore have anything to do with this series? Did Bruce Maddox find the disassembled Lore and use Data's neural net to recreate Data in the body of his brother? That's a question I have. It's a question that's the biggest question that I have. As soon as they started talking about the fact that that Data was lost, or that everything about Data was lost and he couldn't be recreated, I kept thinking to myself, what about Lore? Like, Lore wasn't disintegrated; he was disassembled, the same way B4 was. If there was anyone that is a Soong type android, it's gonna be Lore. So, so that's it for my not necessarily deep dive into the first 2 episodes of Star Trek Picard. You can always find all of my articles and reviews, and my reviews of the first 2 episodes of Star Trek Picard on my website, superpoweredfancast.com. Superpowered Fancast, we talk about everything in pop culture. No, not everything. As always, you can let me know what you like, what you don't like. What are your theories about Star Trek Picard? You can leave a comment on the video below and let me know what you think. You can always email me questions or speculation, concerns at superpoweredfancast.com. And until next time, this is Darren from Superpowered Fancast saying, see you next time.